Okay. If you are not into Olympic news, you might want to not listen. I keep recommending people don't listen to my podcast. But if you're not into Olympic news, there's clearly going to be no other news until the Olympics are finished. We have 3 weeks until they start. I think 3 weeks until they start. Then there's going to be a couple weeks of the Olympics, and then it's going to be weeks and weeks and weeks of, was this a good idea, the fallout, was it successful or not? People saying it was successful, people saying it was an absolute disaster. How many cases of coronavirus are resulted because of the Olympics? Right now, they keep talking about how athletes keep getting coronavirus when they show up. So we had the team from Uganda. There's been a couple other incidences now. I didn't keep track of them because I just knew this was going to be all week, every week. So honestly, not worth keeping track of because you just knew it was coming anyways. It was just the only reason the one from Uganda was significant is because it was the first, and I don't think they did anything wrong. I don't blame them. I hope they all feel better. So they're going to do all the Olympic. We'll do the COVID and Olympics are now intertwined in such a way you can't do one without the other. But I got a ton of Olympic news. In fact, that's all. It's like 90% of what we're talking about today. I just went over my notes, and the first thing that caught my eye was COVID numbers going up. In Tokyo, that's actually the case. I think they're going to call it our fifth wave. I don't know how many waves you get before you just decide that it's just been one giant wave the whole time. But this has had an effect on the thing. One of the things I've talked about the last 2 weeks is ticket numbers, ticket release. And because ticket numbers are going out, they decided to put the release of the current sort of pool of tickets on hold. And that is because they're worried that if the coronavirus numbers go up even more, the capacity of the events will be reduced again, perhaps to zero. Suga, again, not in charge of the Olympics, not involved in this at all in any real way other than being prime minister of the country at the time it happens. He's actually said again, we should consider having zero spectators at the Olympics. That is clearly what no one in the Olympic Committee wants, no one in the Japanese Olympic Committee. They don't want that. They want people there knowing that that'll change the atmosphere. But Suga's like, look, it's going to suck. It's going to be a recipe for disaster. Don't have spectators at the Olympics. It's surprising they're refusing to listen to the prime minister, but again, he's not actually in charge. This is funny because if it's a failure, it's going to be on him. He's going to get the blame for it. If it's successful, he actually gets credit, but the whole time he's been saying like, not really thinking this is a great idea, guys. Maybe we shouldn't do this, but whatever. So I've learned a lot about like changes to the Olympics and rules and stuff. And one of the more interesting ones was the protest rules have been relaxed. So of course in America, there's been taking a knee has been forefront in the last 2-3 years now. You actually probably don't realize how long it's been going on. It's been multiple years. The pandemic kind of overshadowed a lot of stuff. We had Black Lives Matters, but that was like more traditional protests where they went out and it was a large crowd of people. You can express your views before and after competition. And the new guidelines say you are allowed to take a knee. You are allowed to speak to the media, I suppose, about specific issues. You are allowed to post online. And you are allowed to wear clothes with political slogans. Which I thought taking a knee. I mean, they had the classic fist up, was it Jesse Owens? And he was, sticking it to them. So he made a political gesture. And I think actually that might have been when they started being like, whoa. Maybe ease off on the political gestures when standing on the podium. But honestly, if you're a political person and you care about stuff, that is the moment when everyone's paying attention to you. It makes a lot of sense. Speaking to the media, I thought you were almost obligated to do that. I don't think you get fined like they do in other sports if you refuse to speak to the media, but I think pretty much you were expected to speak to the media. So I guess they're saying now you can speak to the media and talk about whatever issue you think is relevant to the day. There are a lot of things you can't do, though, and this was the bit that was maybe more interesting. You are not allowed to protest or put on sort of a display during the ceremonies, like the opening and closing ceremonies, or in the Olympic Village. Protests must not target directly or indirectly be against people, countries, organizations, or their dignity. Which I think maybe with that kind of strict regulation of what you're allowed to protest, it makes it almost impossible to protest. So they're saying, like, yeah, go ahead, do your protests in the Olympics. But if you're not allowed to target people, countries, or organizations, what are you protesting? I suppose the only thing left is protesting ideas. So racism. But the idea of racism, racist police, like the Black Lives Matter is a big thing, is racism as part of the system in police forces. You're not allowed, because that's an organization, you're not allowed to protest that. So you could say racism is bad, but racist cops I'm not allowed to mention. I don't know if I'm really on board with their restrictions. I think if you're the whole bringing people together for the Olympics, you're going to get people with different ideas. And I think they should be allowed to express those ideas so that people can decide whether they agree or not. Hiding it doesn't fix anything or change anything. I've never paid attention to the Olympics in a political way, though. So I'd actually be interested, because now, certainly the Americans, there's a lot of protesting going on. This will be a large stage for attention. I am interested to see how far people take it. The clothing with slogans, I would like to see some of that happen. So Naomi Osaka, she wore face masks and it had stuff written on it. I thought that was pretty cool. Another sort of restriction, and this was interesting because this was very Japanese to me. U.S. media, specifically the American media, has said the COVID rules against getting close to people and talking to people and stuff. They say it actually violates sort of the rules of press freedom. They're banning foreign journalists from interviewing spectators. Now, if I was a foreign journalist in Japan and they're holding the Olympics when there's a pandemic going on, I absolutely would be the first thing to be like, hey, do you think it's safe to be here? Those are the questions I would ask. And I think many journalists feel the same way. So you're not allowed to do interviews with dissenting views. So connect that to our previous thing where, you know, people are allowed to protest, but they're only allowed to protest ideas, not against specific things, or organizations or people. Not allowed to express dissenting views kind of hits the same thing, only more restrictive. The reason this was so that part is like, oh, that doesn't seem particularly biased towards Japan, or why did you say that was very Japanese? Well, here you go. The second part. The Japanese media has no such restrictions. Japanese media is pretty much always falls in line. There's not a lot of dissenting media. Certainly news shows, I wouldn't say pro-government, but they're pretty close. I mean, they don't tend to disagree with what the government says you're supposed to say. I've never watched Japanese news shows to get a view. Basic information is probably accurate, but like an actual view or opinion that would be different from what's being presented on every other news channel, that actually might be more rare. I really don't watch Japanese news. That's actually the short version. So the Americans are saying, this is really unfair. Why do the Japanese media get to interview spectators and we don't? And I can almost guarantee it's because the Japanese media isn't going to go to a spectator and be like, hey, do you think this is a bad idea? Are you worried about coronavirus? What do you think about the Olympic version, the Olympic strain of the coronavirus that's about to happen? They're not going to say any of that. Japanese media, I mean, they're probably going to be like focusing on what you can eat at the Olympics. Whoa, oishii. My. Oh, they may have French fries. French fries? Fries that have been made in France? No. These are potato strips that have been deep fried. Try one. Oh, how are they French? They are French in spirit. I've decided I'm just going to start doing one-man plays. I'm going to take this little title thing away. It's not going to be Ninja News Japan. It's not going to be Chuck McBeef Chess. It's not going to be Veloz Podcast. It's going to be Peter's one-man show. Or maybe that's the next podcast, the video podcast where I do tiny one-man shows expressing ideas and beliefs in acts. But yes, Japanese media is atrocious when it comes to actually doing anything so I would call hard-hitting. The closest they get to hard-hitting would be like a feel-good story almost, where you're going to cry at the end. So it's going to be someone who got sick, and their parents die and they feel really sad, but then they make a good life for themselves. That would be like a hard-hitting Japanese news story. I honestly think Ninja News Japan is probably a better source of actual information, primarily because I say things, but then it's very obvious when I'm giving my opinion. Whereas Japanese news media would actually just never have an opinion other than like things in Japan are great. You do get a lot of very pro-Japanese ideas and feelings in media in Japan. But I absolutely predict one show where they talk about what you can. They're going to go over what the athletes eat. Oh, and they're going to go and see how much they eat and and be like, oh, it's so much food. Fucking marathon runners, yes, they eat like twice as much food as I do because they burn 10 times more calories. That's why they're all small and skinny. And like I eat a hamburger and I gain a kilo. No one gives a shit. I was in university. I was a big dude, much bigger than I am now. I was doing weights in the morning and judo almost every night. So I was doing 4 or 5 days a week of weights and then maybe 3-4 days a week of judo. So I was huge and I ate a lot. I mean, no question, I ate a lot of food. I had a friend who was a marathon runner, as a little girl, maybe went up to my shoulder, probably not even. She easily ate twice as much food as I did. She was like doing basically marathons almost weekly. And then her training was like mini marathons, like 5Ks and stuff. I was always shocked. If I ordered something, she ordered double. That was kind of her ordering system. It was amazing. And so they're going to put that on Japanese TV and be like, oh, they eat so much food. Olympic athletes, man. Of course they do. Shut up. I could do a whole series of just find clips of Japanese TV and then just the end just cut to me going, oh, shut up. That would be just as engaging as ramen from Tokyo? Oh my God, it has a piece of pork in it. I'm so lost already. This is probably one of the problems with me just kind of going off into my own sort of stream of consciousness is I get lost in there. The Samoan weightlifting team is withdrawing from the Olympics, not for any sort of political reason. Samoa is still under a state of emergency and they're in lockdown. So it's only the weightlifting team because they're still there. There are other teams from Samoa that are like in Australia, in New Zealand, other places, and they're allowed to travel because that's where their training camps were. So that's kind of sad. They actually, the story with the guy who's in charge of the weightlifting team, he was pretty upset about it. He's like, but safety's more important. We want to keep all these guys healthy and safe. I was on board of that. There's this judo dude, and he's kind of in charge of the Japanese Olympic Committee. It makes sense. He was in the Olympics. He won a gold medal in Los Angeles for judo. And he said the focus for the Olympics is on athlete safety. He's actually talking about the Japanese teams. He's like, our primary concern in this Olympics is making sure that the athletes are safe, which is a very nice thing. That's what your kind of coach should be thinking. They got 12 medals last Olympics, and they had a target, quota of 30 medals for this Olympics, which I didn't know was a thing. Because the question to me is, so they put up a quota of 30 medals. If you don't get them, what happens? And then who gets blamed? Because you have more than one sport. So let's say the judo guys, they don't do as well. So they get lots of medals in judo. It's a Japanese sport, kind of makes sense. Like if the swimmers don't, so let's say they don't do very well, do the swimmers have to pick up the slack? Do they have to do more? It doesn't really make any sense. How do you impose a quota and then actually expect success is one of the questions on Olympic medals. And then what is the punishment for not fulfilling the quota? I actually assume this would be like if you achieve the quotas, you get benefits. I'd assume more money to your training program, let's say. But actually, quotas generally are, if you don't meet this quota, you get punished. So that actually was my first thought. And then it took me a minute to go, like, I bet it just stays exactly the same. If you don't meet the quota, it goes wrong when it benefits you if you exceed the quota. But I didn't know countries put gold medal quotas on their Olympic teams. That was weird. So anyways, the judo dude sitting down, he's talking about safety of the athletes. And what I regard as success is that people struggling in many countries due to the pandemic feel empowered by the performance and achievement of their own country's athletes. And that, if you've listened to me more than once, you know there's a couple of words in there that I really disagree with, because why is it your own country's athletes that you should be impressed by? I think you should be impressed by everyone who tries really hard and is successful. Your country is irrelevant, and that is counter to the message of the Olympics, which everyone involved with the Olympics seems to not fucking remember. The Olympics is supposed to be coming together in the spirit of sport and union, and trying to make people, come together and be nice and happy and enjoy sports together. Your country, therefore, is not the relevant part of that statement. Be impressed by the Samoan team. Even if you're not from Samoa, be impressed with the South African team. Even if you're not from South Africa, if they do a good job and show, good sportsmanship. Your own countries is a bit that bugs me, but that's I think maybe a very Japanese way of looking at things. Like they really believe in supporting their own teams, which it makes sense, but actually to me runs counter to the spirit of the Olympics. So it doesn't say, I actually started looking, trying to find it, but I couldn't find it. Like, what happens if you don't achieve the medal quota that's been set? Probably nothing, for being really honest. Okay, the last Olympic story, I think, on this page. There is a team There is a team dedicated to shielding athletes from hateful comments online, but only in Japan. So there's a Japanese group that's supposed to stop Japanese athletes from getting hate on the internet. And that happens a lot. There was the very tragic story of a pro wrestler who was on Terrace House, and she got so much hate online she committed suicide. And so that's became a national issue at that point. And they're saying like cyberbullying. Bullying's a huge issue in Japan. It's really common in schools and stuff. It's a very difficult thing to fix. And what they're saying is, well, we're gonna have a team in place to shield them. And I was like, if I was in the Olympics, I don't know if social media would be like. I think I would just not have my phone with me, or I wouldn't be checking social media. I'd probably have my phone. I might read the internet, but I doubt. I guess you would. There's too many people tempted to check up on themselves, like if they're being talked about in the Olympics. So maybe it is good. Take away their phones. I guess they get no news from back home then is a problem. There was not much information about this team or how they were put together or who they are or where they work. And I think it's because this was supposed to be a secret that got out by accident. So they tried to change it. The story I read, the story I read was trying to like shift focus away. Like there's this team in place to protect the athletes from social media. That's all they said. And they started talking about all this other stuff and like other events, like the pro wrestler who killed herself. And I was like, oh, they're actually not telling us any information. It's just this story has already started to get out. And that, again, sort of fed back to the media bias of Japan, where they're not going to say the bad things. I've totally lost track of my sentence. Transition. Remember the dude who broke out of quarantine? I did this last week and maybe 2 weeks ago. There's a guy who was in quarantine, and he smashed a window, and he climbed out 6 floors. They didn't tell us how he got down from the 6th floor. I was really interested in that part. And I said there was no reason to break out of quarantine, but there must be a reason. We don't know what the reason. Wow, we found the reason. Yay. He said, and this is absolute bullshit, I wanted to visit my friend in Nara, which is, I guess, possibly true, but I absolutely doubt that's the case. Because it turns out June 18th, which was before he went into quarantine, he was actually arrested for possession of stimulant drugs, which is usually like cocaine or something that gets you going. And then he was, and then it was like 2 days or 3 days later, he was put into quarantine, and he probably broke out of quarantine, I assume to escape the police. On the June 25th, I didn't write down the actual dates. I guess it doesn't matter. A couple days later, he was caught in the toilet of a train station in Osaka, which is not the standoff you'd really be hoping for. So he said the reason he broke out of quarantine was to go visit his friend, but I am suspicious that because of that previous arrest that he hadn't actually gone to jail for, hadn't actually gone to court for, that he was actually trying to get away from the police. I don't have a lie detector on me right now, but I detect a little lie myself. I mentioned the Japanese vaccine passport before, and they're looking for acceptance in 10. It said 10 plus, which is any number more than 10, 100, 5,000, whatever. They're looking, but there's 10 maybe countries, mostly European countries that they're focused on. There's a lot of tourism from Japan to Europe. And they say, we're going to make a passport. It's going to say, let's say Peter has got his vaccination. You can accept that. He can travel around Europe, have a good time, spend money, come back with souvenirs. Maybe they'll give me one. That's great. Sounds all right. Europe's already doing this. They have a vaccine passport. So you have your vaccine, you have more access to travel. You have more countries you can go to. But if you come back, if it's a European person coming to Japan, you have to go into quarantine. So what they're saying is, please accept our vaccine passport, but we are not going to accept your vaccine passport. And you can understand how countries are when they're like, fuck off, what's that? Turns out Singapore and Israel have both come out and said, dude, that's so unfair. You either give us the same exceptions or nothing. I didn't know there was a lot of Japanese tourism to Israel. I know Singapore's big. I know a lot of people have gone to Singapore because it's relatively close. I didn't, there's no reason for it. I guess because it doesn't come up very much. I just didn't think people in Japan went to Israel. Maybe they do. But they're not going to now with their vaccine passport, because Israel's going to be like, if you don't show me mine, if you don't show me yours, I'm not going to show you mine. It's a quid pro quo. Fuck. I gotta drink some hot water before I start. Just clear all this out. I'm walking Dave. It's super humid. My mouth's all mealy. Get in the microphone. I like the updates. This was the guy who stole recorders. Really creepy dude. It didn't just stop there. So he stole X amount of recorders. He had so many in his house, and he sold a bunch online. But he took it further. And this actually might have been part of what got him in trouble and got him caught. Turns out he's also a stalker. So he just got stalking charges laid on him. And he went to one girl. She's like 19. And she has a blog. And he goes on her blog and he types. And I'm sure my voice is already creepy enough. Any male voice doing this is going to be pretty solid. Did you clean your room? Did you find something nostalgic? Like a whistle? There should be two, but there is not. Is that right? Which is, the implication here is that he went into her room and took it, which I don't think is true. I think he stole it because he stole all the other ones while they were at school. So probably he stole it at school. How he knew she had two is a bit creepy. And the fact that she's 19, I don't think she's playing the recorder anymore. There are a lot of questions this one to open up. So he gets arrested for stalking because this is just disgusting and gross and you should not do it. When he's being arrested, he tries to downplay it. He goes, I made the comments. So he admits he said he typed this up, but I mean, he was caught. I made the comments, but it was not done out of a feeling of love, resentment, or hatred. Which covers pretty much all the options, really. So he's saying, I don't love her. I don't resent her. I don't hate her. I don't have any positive or negative emotions at all. Then what, if that's not the case, drove him to make this statement? I think I'm going to imply that I've been in your room and stolen something and I'm a creepy human being. That is a very strange thing. So, big questions there. Because if you're saying I didn't do it out of these feelings, there is, we have to then extrapolate and say, what feeling is left that you did it out of? That's weird. The recorder that he was mentioning was actually found in part of his stash. And then I had the question of how could they tell? Because I've seen recorders and they all look exactly the same. They're all plastic. I mean, there's either brown or white with the white tip. That's it. I mean, are there that many differences? How could you tell that this recorder belonged to this girl? Unless, I guess maybe they put their name on it. I guess that was something I would do with my kids. You don't want kids sharing recorders, certainly not now. So yeah, you put your kid's name on it. I guess if the name somehow held up over time. But yeah, this dude is gross. And he takes it a step further. So there's one thing, being gross is bad. But being gross and trying to like rub it in people's faces, that is worse. Tenga is a masturbatory aid. So I said that right. Can't say quid pro quo, but I can say masturbatory aid without any trouble at all. Probably have just said masturbatory aid too many times in my life. Masturbatory aid. It's a tube for the male to use in lieu of another option. There's a good explanation of what it is. They are going to shoot a rocket into space, and they say it's to conduct research so that they can create a tool for astronauts to pleasure themselves. I guess if you're in space for an extended amount of time, you do get certain urges. These are, virile men forging on into the boundaries of known humanity. So there is actually a problem with freehanding it if you're in space, and because normally all you have to deal with is cleanup, but gravity actually means you can kind of keep that under control, whereas no gravity means, yeah, that's just there. I now have a lot of questions about that. It must have happened. Like, astronauts must have run into this. I remember reading a thing on the internet, and it was actually like one of the problems in space is pooping. And they were talking about, this was like to mission control, and then they're having a conversation, and then he goes, whose poop is that? So poop's flying around and then someone in the back's like, it's not mine, mine was more brown than that. So they're actually checking like the color and consistency and stuff. Which, yeah, you can see like diarrhea in space would be a huge problem because it's very hard to clean up, but then just trying to keep it under control is an issue. And then you can't just wear diapers. Like, you wear diapers. I know they wear diapers pretty much all the time, but this is one of the things Gravity got wrong, because when she has Sandra Bullock has the scene where she takes her spacesuit off, she should be wearing big unattractive diapers, not sexy underwear. Totally ruined the movie for me and my diaper fetish. So clearly freehanding is not okay. So if you had a tool, which the Tenga is, maybe it could maintain a certain amount of control on your behalf and then make cleanup more possible. And then you could also, you would have more control over what's going on. Your environment would not be at as risk. How about that? But they're just sending up a device. They're not doing human testing. So I was actually like, are you sending a person up there who's going to, like, their job is to test this machine? I guess it's not a machine. It might be, though, because they didn't say what it was. The Tenga thing on Earth is like a tube. The Tenga thing in space might have like a vacuum element to it, to try to keep everything. I'm now designing one that you could use in space myself in my head. Not what I should be doing right now.
You can tweet questions or comments at Ninja News Japan or join the Facebook group. On Facebook, search for Ninja News Japan. Sexy out, homie.
So this is a story from the other day, and it's a dude who kind of lost his shit. Basically, he was in a car accident of some sort, and he tried to take off, and the cops chased him down. And it's interesting to see the effectiveness of the police. Actually, I'm going to do full screen so you can see it better. I would like to actually sort of analyze some of the techniques happening here. So you have the man. He has a metal pole, and right now on the screen you can see him and like 3 cops. There's the guy right in front, there's a guy out in the back. I think that's a cop, and then this guy's arm. He's clearly a cop with him. And they're rushing up on him. I mean, did you check that spin just there? That was pretty cool. He just took it up over his head around. This is a guy who maybe has done some That was great. Our police officer who's tried to do the tackle, he slipped. And I think that might be because of it's wet. But then look at that foot. I was like, oh God, that had to have hurt. So I think he slipped on this foot and then he went down. He doesn't really seem to get hit by the pipe. In fact, the guy doesn't really seem to hit anyone. This big tool the cop has. Dramatic. The dramatic turns are awesome. And then this is like, he thinks he's in a samurai movie. They got these like big poles that they try to use to subdue people without hurting them. There's a lot of the stuff in Japan is actually focused on not hurting the person, just catching them.
押さえようとしますが、
So he's running away,
鉄パイプを
and he's like, "Nope,
警察官に向けて
He does a
走
little
って
cool
逃げようとしま
backhand.
す。押さえようとしますが、
Look at that.
鉄パイプを警
Gets around behind to
察
get
官
back
に
in
向け
front
て
again.
走っ
The mistake he made was just thinking he was in good shape. The dude with the shield comes up. That is a solid hit. You can see he's being lifted up off his feet here. He has lost all contact with the earth, really, and he's about to drop his pole, it looks like.
て逃げようとします。
Oh, he kept hold of the pole, but now he's got, oh, that guy's got a stick. This guy's pushing him down. This guy's pushing him down. He's now got 3 guys on him. 1 guy is going to be beating him from behind, and this guy's like, maybe I should video this for social media.
その後、公務執行妨害の疑いで現行犯逮捕されました。
Yeah, check that out. Behind the
逮
back.
捕されたのは
Zoom in
茅
on
ヶ
his
崎
face.
市の
This
自
dude's
称
40 years
派
old
遣
and
社
he should
員
know better.
沼
The
上
big
正
back
幸容疑者
tattoo
で、警察によりますと
tells me
現場近くの交差点で交通事故を起こして逃走し、
So yeah, there's the car
動かな
accident.
くなった
Swinging
車
around
を乗り
behind.
捨て
Yeah, I'm gonna get
鉄
you.
パイプを
It's a
振り
big
回し
tiger
ていたという
tattoo.
ことです。
Very exciting.
調べに対し
We
沼上
gotta,
容疑者は
I'm sure
お
one
ま
of
わ
these
り
other
さんの
Twitter
制
things is
服を見た
actually
ので、鉄パイプを
someone
振り
turns
回
it into a
して
lightsaber.
近くに来ないようにしようと思ったと話し、容疑を認めているとい
I
う
could
こと
watch
で
this
す。
all day. There's so
ま
much to
た
analyze and
薬
look at.
物
The
の
two
使用を
shield
ほのめ
bash
か
is
している
good
という
into
こ
the
とで、
railing.
警察は経緯を
Pretty
詳しく
pretty
調べ
happy.
てい
The
ます。
police, again, they've got the shields out of the way. They got his feet up in the air.
今日午
He's
前
screwed.
8時前、
Anyways, that's just one of these sort of weird little stories that's going on. This guy's basically become famous primarily for his pole handling technique. Relates to our previous story. I'm waiting for like a version or a dub of this where someone, switches out to a lightsaber. That'll probably come in a day or two. The police handle this kind of situation really well. In America, that guy would be dead. In Canada, he wouldn't be dead. He'd probably be beaten pretty hard. They have, actually, we could go back to this. They have the guy who fell down. Get that up on the screen. This pole thing right here it's like a big fork without the middle tong. It's what they actually want to do is get 2 people, one on either side, and try to catch you. So he's at this point, what he's really only trying to do is push him or knock the pole out of his hand.
横浜
Right, and he's got it down by his feet, but that's where the foot goes, where he's actually slipped, and I feel sorry
市
because
と近く
then he's dropped his pole, he's got his hands up.
の路上
He does a kick. No accuracy at all in that kick. But he knows that the only thing he needs to do now is keep that guy far enough away so he can't hit him with the pole. So I'm actually, while this is embarrassing that this has been caught on TV, very technically he's done a lot of the right stuff. The police behind him are trying to sneak up. They're actually going to protect their friend now.
で鉄
If he had gotten like a little bit of a beat down on that cop, I bet they would have taken him down way harder.
警
And
察
that's when
官
he
が
starts
取
to
り
run
押さ
away
えよう
because
と
he's
し
going to
ま
get
すが、
caught.
鉄
Should
パイ
not
プ
have
を警
turned
察
around because
官
that
に
cop
向
who
け
just
て
passed by the
走っ
screen
て
gets him.
逃げようとします。
Boom! You're
その後
done.
公務執行妨害の疑いで現行犯逮
We
捕
don't
され
need
ま
to
し
see that again. Bet my won't be able to search fast enough. Google. Japanese police do. I'm not gonna be able to find it. There was a video of a foreigner, and he was in a cafe. He was just losing his mind. They had like 6 or 7 cops on him, and they were just trying to get him to the ground. They weren't actually trying to hurt him. They were just trying to get him down. I am now interested in this. I can just do a little. So this guy's being a dick. He's probably drunk. There's 4 cops there. This dude is stout. See that guy? The guy just laid him out. He just punched him. But yeah, what I mean is like in America, I mean that guy would have been tasered by now. There you go. So this is an over-the-shoulder throw. So I've actually done this in tournament. So here he's got his head, the arm up here, this one over his shoulder. That actually means all of his weight can only push on this side of the policeman's body. Right? So he moves it over, and what he's actually done is move him to the left. That's actually moving more of his body to the left. He's going to take this foot and step to the outside. Right? Okay. He just moved his foot to the outside, stuck his hip out. This is a hip throw. Booyakasha, bitch, you're going down. He just hit that boy with the planet Earth. I should not get as excited. It's cool to see. All the years of training I've done in Japan, it is consistently cops show up. They have to train in judo, and this is exactly why. He had that right from the beginning. He had his arms up. When the guy went for him, he throws his hands up over the shoulder. That was this perpetrator's mistake, was getting his hand up there. He's keeping the hand up there. Boom, he's down. That guy had no chance of escaping that. Didn't matter if he was bigger or smaller. He goes for the leg. Another big mistake. There's just too many cops now for any actual good take. Oh, there you go. Oh, Osoto Gari is the name of that throw. I think I've just found a new online sort of thing I can do, is just tell you about the judo the Japanese police are doing. Let's just get that spot again. So he gets up, they get him back. The first one was a hip throw because his feet didn't come off the ground. This one, he's going to do use his leg as a pivot point. So there you go, right there. His leg goes up, and it's gone out behind his opponent's body. Oh, he actually rebalanced and did it again, but they have him fairly under control. You can see this leg is out. It's going to sweep this leg and actually probably catch the other one. The guy's on the side, so he's going to flip over that leg and hit the ground again. Boom. Not very hard this time. They're being very gentle. If I did that full power into the ground, I guarantee I could knock him unconscious. These cops, and no one probably uses this, are being so gentle with this guy. He's not even bleeding yet. If I'd thrown him twice into the ground on concrete, he would not be getting up again. Dude, and he's still fighting. And they haven't tasered him. They haven't beat him up. He's got tattoos on his arms, too. He might be low-grade Yakuza. Knee in the back. I can't breathe. Trying to do a push-up. Good luck, buddy. How much longer does this go on for? It's just all the cops mobbing him now. But I do want to get the foreigner one. The foreigner one was good because he was 6'4", and all the cops were 5 something.